After the violent riot at the Capitol building last week, our Nick Emmons spoke with Dr. Steven Hassan, a former member of the Moonies cult in the 1970s, who's written a book that compares his experiences to what he sees in the president and some of his supporters who were willing to become violent on the president's behalf.
You don't seem to be a political person who goes around talking about politics all the time, right? You are specifically, dealing with people who are handling mind control, getting out of cults and things like that. So why did you write the book, The Cult of Trump?
Yeah, I've been specifically not political, human rights guy. My agent suggested the book and the title, and my first reaction is it's going to alienate all the people who are believers, so I don't want to do it. And they said, yeah, but they're not going to read your book anyway, and the public needs to understand what cults are, and they need to understand the stereotypical profile of a cult leader, which, by the way, is malignant narcissism. And I have a whole chapter comparing Trump with Jim Jones and Moon and Hubbard and other cult leaders. So that's why I decided to go out of my comfort zone, because I felt that strongly that democracy was at great risk and that this was an opportunity to share my life work and try to wake people up to the fact that intelligent, educated people can be deceived and can be manipulated and can be indoctrinated into a destructive authoritarian cult.
You talked a little bit about the personality trait of a cult leader, malignant narcissist. Walk me through what you see in President Trump, both before he was, into politics and running for president, and then as he was president. Talk about his personality that stands out to you.
Sure. So the term malignant narcissist is not just the narcissism, but the sociopathic, elements as well. And so the grandiosity, the need for admiration and praise, the lack of empathy, and then moving on to pathological lying, believing they're above the law, threats, paranoia, inability to trust. You go down the entire list, as I did in chapter 3, and compared him with other cult leaders, and they're all there, unfortunately. And I also, in my research for the book, realized that there were a lot of authoritarian cults that were influencing Trump, that were backing his run for president, and whose followers are his base. And the public doesn't understand this portion of it, which is critical for them.
And that brings up another point here, because 74 million people voted for Trump. So what specifically is the cult of Trump? Is it all 74 million people who decided to check his name at the ballot box, or what is the specific cult that you're referring to?
So for me, I do not think everyone who voted for him is necessarily a mind control victim. I do think that there are people who are single issue voters, like, pro right to life for fetuses, etc. So they may have voted or they identify as Republicans and just wouldn't vote for a Democrat no matter who it was. What I consider cult members are people who are really blindly loyal, obedient, black and white, all or nothing, good versus evil. Anyone who buys into QAnon, for example, which I included in my book, fits all the criteria of my BITE model of authoritarian control. In order to not have an authoritarian cult, you need to not only have a leader who's responsible, accountable, transparent, empathetic, thinking of the good of the people as opposed to the good of themselves, but you really need checks and balances, observing rules of law. And Trump has always thought that he was above the law and it didn't matter. Even before he was elected, he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and my followers would still follow me. That rings bells of dangerousness and not someone that we want to give any public office to.
Yeah, and just, another red flag, I think you highlighted in your book as well. There was a moment after he was president, that moment where he's sitting at the table with his cabinet members and they go around the room and all of them heap praise onto him. As someone who follows and studies mind control, I mean, what were you seeing when that moment played out?
Oh, that reminded me of being in the Mooney cult, honestly, being around the table with Moon and how everyone treated Moon as the greatest man on earth. Frightening and upsetting. And I'm not alone as a former cult member to feel triggered whenever Trump would talk, because the way he acts brings up, oh my goodness, that's just like my former cult leader, and this should not be in a country that's free like America.
What is it when people are going around a room like that? I mean, these are people who made it to be cabinet members, in our government. And you wouldn't think that these are followers, lost people, if you will, picked up off the street and following some cult leader. But what is it that made them go around the room and to do something like this?
Understanding the need of the situation and a certain amount of groupthink and group conformity, that obeisance, to laud him and make him happy. And, he's very transparent in many, many ways. When he tweets and puts somebody down, shames them or threatens them or whatever, it has an effect. And it's messaging, to everyone else.
With Donald Trump in getting support from certain elements that are calling for civil wars and things like that, do you think it's more those elements rising up and increasing those calls and him just playing off of it? Or do you think these are his ideas? He wants to see them storm the Capitol steps.
Oh, he definitely wants to not lose power, and he is following the dictator or cult leader playbook to use your members for maximum effect. And some of the information that I've gleaned is that he's preparing to have a shadow government after he exits Washington, D.C., to keep all of his followers donating money to him and to still have influence in conservative politics.
As far as, President Trump and the influence that he has had, he can't be the only politician, the only president who had this type of personality. Have you looked at other people maybe on the left, former presidents and politicians who had this same personality and the same influence on people?
I haven't studied other presidents, to be honest, and I hope I never have to after this. But, you can have a narcissistic personality, but still have a conscience and still respect the rule of law and have some care about what your family, your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, your employees have. And there's nothing that is as egregious as Donald Trump's behavior.